Today, my guest, you've seen him across the U.S., seen him across TNA, OVW, Mr. Mario Bokra. Mario, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing? Thanks for having me on here. I
I
appreciate it.
going through a heat wave, but other than that, I'm doing pretty
Yeah, I hear that. We're in Florida, so yeah, it's always a heat wave.
good. I'm in southern Indiana, so from your time in OVW, I'm sure you know it's raining,
Oh yeah,
snowing, then it's 100 degrees the next day, so it's hard to get anything right and not be sick all the time.
yeah, yeah. I definitely know that.
So, how did professional wrestling come into your life? What made you want to get into this crazy industry?
Um, I mean, when I was younger, I remember like the first time I actually saw it was the Saturday night's main event with the double Earl Hebner
Mm-hmm.
turn with Hogan and Andre, and I was like super young, so I was trying to stay up and watch it, and I couldn't. And I fell asleep like literally on the living room floor. And I went to my dad the next morning. I was like, "Who won?" And he's like, "Andre." And I was like, "No, no way," And I was like, so then I was like, I had to, figure it out too. And I had gotten an action figure of Hulk Hogan too from someone in my family. And then when I like realized, oh my God, this guy's like on TV and he's got like an action figure. So I was always just like kind of enthralled with it, and it just kind of snowballed from there. With
Mm-hmm.
I think it just always loved it. It was just always there for me. So
What age did you decide that this was something that you were truly going to pursue?
probably like in my early like teens, and maybe not even teens, like 11 or 12 or something like that. Um, my mother was always, big with. She used to always tell me to follow your dreams. Like follow your dreams, and so that always stuck in the back of my mind, and I always just wanted to try to, do that. So that was early on for me, where I was, that kind of had that in the back of my mind, and people were just like, yeah, okay, like whatever, bro, like luck.
And was it hard when you finally decided that this is what you're going to pursue to get into professional wrestling?
Yeah, back when I was doing it, it was I got in February of 2000. That was when I started.
Mm-hmm.
But back then there was not really, the means of social media to get into places and find things, and schools were like a hidden thing. It wasn't even like people had no idea what it was. So I had looked up actually, and I heard of the Monster Factory because I was in Jersey. So I tried. Me and my buddy, like, we map quested, I think, some kind of address for a show, and we must have drove like 8 hours that day, 3 hours down, and we searched for like a few hours, and then finally nobody knew what the hell we were talking about. So we finally drove back, and then I had somebody that um, knew somebody that was wrestling, and I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, there's a school too, like in Jersey, and I'm like, really? Because my mom was like, did not want me to leave anyway, too. So I'm like, all right, because I was 19, I just got out of
Mm-hmm.
high school, and so I found ECPW, Gino Caruso in Lake Hiawatha, New Jersey, and that was it. I was like, it was, first time I got in there, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, this is it.
Was it harder than what you thought it would be?
Um, I played football. I wrestled in high school just because too. I knew like the amateur, like I always knew like amateur is going to help you in the professional world.
Mm-hmm.
So I always did amateur in high school. So I mean, I was pretty physical with sports and stuff, but um, I just, people were like, man, you got a nice drop kick, or they're like, yeah, you throw a nice leg drop, or yeah, you take good bumps, and it's like, all right, cool. So I just kind of went with it, and just I don't know, like it just felt very natural to me. I watched enough of it, I thought, so it was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was always just pretty natural with me. My family, my sister was a gymnast at Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
My dad played soccer for many years. I mean, like we were just pretty athletic all around. Sports was always big. So,
How long did you train before you started doing these matches?
so I trained it was actually about 6 months. So that was kind of like their their like training program. They said after about 6 months you'll have your first match. So I basically got to do stuff with ECPW just straight, and it was like, they had a little TV on closed circuit stuff.
Hmm.
They bring tapes in, so they were on television, but it was a whole little, studio and everything. I thought, to me, that was the greatest thing ever. Like, it was awesome, like it was just, I thought couldn't get any better than that, at least.
How long?
So I was there for about like maybe like 2 years or so, 3 years.
Did you now after you got done with your initial training? Did you just stay in that general area?
I did at first because at the same point too, they didn't want you
Hmm.
working indies. They didn't want you leaving. They didn't want you working for another promoter. Like that was it. Like you were like blacklisted if you worked for somebody else.
Hmm.
So I kind of stayed there until um like I ended up I started doing tag team for 2 years because that was always like easier to learn together.
Hmm.
It was me and another guy, Russ. We tag teamed for about 2 years, and we had like tag titles, and then we ended up feuding with each other, and then like at one point you just realize like you've done everything there. Like I, not to like toot my own horn, but I was like the youngest Triple Crown champion that they said who won every title, and I was like in my early 20s. And then it's like after I you know you finally reach this goal, you're like, what the hell am I going to do now? Like, so then you started to kind of venture out, and you knew you had to leave the nest to
Hmm.
get better.
Was it hard to venture out, and where did you start venturing out to get your name out there?
I always did ring crews,
Hmm.
so that was easy. When I first started training, I hopped in the ring truck and I drove the truck for like 3 years, and you're getting $50 at least to drive the truck and set up the ring, but you usually got a match. I learned, we did a lot of shows with referee Eddie Arango. His father was Bandito
Okay.
over in New Jersey, and he was Bandito Jr. So they ran a lot of shows and they used Gino's ring. So I worked with them a lot, got to learn some stuff. Really any kind of, worked for like, I think it was maybe Jersey All Pro too at the time. First ring crew I did was in like Brooklyn. We had to carry this thing like up 3 flights of a fire escape to get everything in the building. It was the Elks Lodge, I
Hmm.
think in Brooklyn or Queens. And I saw like Tajiri was on that show, Loki was on that show. I mean, I was like the Xavier, like the amount of talent. I was like, bro, like this is crazy. I'm like, these guys are incredible, like, and I never even knew
Hmm.
like that was even out there. But so the ring crew definitely helped me get a lot of knowledge and stuff. And then, that helped out a lot. But I went to seminars all the time, Dr. Tom seminars. I went to Al Snow seminars. I mean, anything that was open, I went to try to learn something because it was just like, there was this whole other world out there that was not accessible unless you went to go get it, you
Hmm.
know.
When do you feel that your name started getting out there? What was that moment?
When I was younger, I ended up joining up into this guy Derek Gordon, in NWA Cyberspace Wrestling.
Hmm.
They were working around Western New Jersey, and when I first started wrestling, I think I was a big Shawn Michaels fan. Everybody really was at the time. He was, smaller stature, so that kind of was like, hey, there was all this wrestling, but at the end of the day, he was still having the best matches out of anybody. I mean, I was young enough or old enough at least to understand that, he was still outperforming people. Um, so that was always like, they were trying to make names, and Mo was always my nickname in high school. People just shorted the Mario and they called me Mo. And then it came out as like, they were thinking of names and they came up with like Mo Sexy, and I was like, no. And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, that's what we're going to call you. And I'm like, God damn it. So that kind of like, it hurt me, um, on the indies because you're coming out as a gimmick
Hmm.
and you're not a gimmick. Like, I should be, you would think if someone like Shawn Michaels would come out, but I'm a, young guy in tights and kick pads. So I just cut out the sexy and made it Sexton.
Mm-hmm.
So at least it sounded similar, but there was no gimmick to it. And I did one show for cyberspace, and I don't know what happened, but I had like this section over here that was the rowdy bunch, and they were like going nuts. And then I came back in the back after the match, and the guy was like, "How many people did you bring here?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because that's how you got booked, was
Mm-hmm.
selling tickets. And I was like, I've never seen them before in my life. And he was like, "Really?" And it was like, "All right, your next show, you'll be back." And it was like, "All right, awesome," like so that just kind of that became like my new home, and that was when I really got to start working, bigger shows and with bigger, getting more notification at least,
Mm-hmm. When did you start pursuing WWE?
I think I was always like kind of right there, but when at NWA Cyberspace there, I was only wrestling about 4 or 5 years, and I was still really young and small. Um, and they had like, we did some extra work, in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
So Great Khali was actually getting looked at. So I think they had us brought in, and we like bumping around for him a little bit. And as soon as he came out of the limo, we were like, "Geez," we're like, "All right." We're like, he's got a job. But it was cool because like Shane McMahon was there, and that was the first time I was like, starstruck at the time. But he was like just so cool,
Mm-hmm.
and we took a bunch of bumps and stuff, and so they let us do extra work. And then while I was there, I had done some stuff with Geno's, and Sergeant Slaughter had seen me do a cage match with Andrew Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
which he had gave me a lot of good praise for. And so at some point we were just like, we were there, and he was putting in words, and people were like, I think something might happen here. And it was like, really? And then it was like, I think they offered like a referee's position, because at the time that's when they were starting to get referees. The Hebners were going, so they were trying to get referees going. And I was already going to OVW because I had went down to a camp the year prior, and I didn't get accepted, but I went back the year later, and they told me to get bigger, do this, do all these things. And I came back a year later and did all those things, and they were like, "Well, it's no guarantee, but if you want to move down, I think you
Mm-hmm.
go right into Rip's class, Rip Rogers, and you'll learn a lot." So I was already kind of heading down there when I did the extra work. So they were like, "Oh, well, if you're already heading down, then we'll just keep an eye on you." And I was like, So I wasn't getting paid to go down, but
Mm-hmm.
so, and that was a hard decision too, because I still wanted to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
And refereeing is different, but they it kind of got caught in miscommunications with people too, because I was nobody back there anyway, and Lauren Ice wanted me to referee, and then this guy told me I was working, so then I couldn't find him, and then I was working, and he's like, "Oh, you're working?" And I'm like, and then it was like, "All right, fuck me," sorry if but I was like, so I didn't know any better, but hindsight, I would have loved to have taken a referee's job, but
Mm-hmm.
so it's just the way things worked out. So
So, what was your first initial thoughts of OVW?
that was like it was college, like to
Mm-hmm.
me, as soon as I got there, and I think I still had maybe an immature outlook or attitude when I first got there, because you were a big fish in a small pond, and now you come here, and it's like you know you gotta it's a whole different ball game down there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the first month was a rough transition for me, I think, because I was used to being the one calling things too, or being more experienced than some people, or just it really taught me the whole ins and outs of the exact there's the basics of you need this foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and without it everything else is garbage, and it's like it was just very eye opening to me. And at one point it was just like, shut up and listen,
Mm-hmm.
keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. It was like, all right. And once I kind of accepted that attitude, it was no problem.
Did they have any plans for you in OVW? Like, how was it going down there? And then did they work with you on who they wanted you to be, or was that something that you were able to do as well?
I didn't really even know who I was when I got down there. I was still like just Mo Sexton, and that was it. I had no gimmick or character really, but I was in the intermediate class, which was Rip Rogers' class. So we were just trying to get TV time, on a taping day on Wednesday, just a dark match. That's all you wanted was at least a dark match. So I was, I was performing well in Rip's class, and you know, word starts to get around of who's good to work with and who people want to work with. So like during practices, people were always like, "Hey, can I run this spot with you? Because you're gonna make me look good." And it was like, "Yeah." I was like, I didn't care who I ran the spot with. It was like as long as it came out well. Um, but that's why I learned a lot in that first year. And then I didn't really have, like I said, much of a character. And then Paul Heyman eventually then came down, and he was in charge of the developmental area, and he had eventually he was the only one that really gave me some kind of a character. And he's just like, you look like you have this mug, this like you're a tough guy or something, like you were like a boxer or something. And I had never boxed before, so I was like, I didn't really know kind of stances or things like that. But he had kind of given me a character, and that was the Mo the Mug character, and it was like a boxer kind of thing. But again, he didn't even have to do that because I wasn't contracted. I was a nobody in the intermediate class, and he gave me an opportunity to do stuff on TV. And Santino Marella he'd been on TV doing the Boris Alexiev gimmick character where he was just ripping through people. And we went to Al, and I was really good friends with Santino from the class anyway, and he was just like, "Can we do something, man, where he like knocks me down?" And Al was like, "Yeah, okay, but don't stay down too long, because he had never been like touched yet." So he went for something, and I hit him with like a big uppercut or something. He dropped, and I went for the cover, and he kicked out. And from what I heard in the back, they were kind of upset because he was like down, and he was still staying down. But then we went right into we went right into the finish with it was actually similar to the Daniel Bryan one they did in the cage where cover kick out, and then right from the ground it was bam into the submission, and I tapped out. But it was fun. But they didn't have to do that, and they did, and I was always grateful for that because I was a nobody.
So after Paul came in, did you feel like there was more of a push for you? Was there obviously you were still trying to get signed, but did you feel like
Yeah.
it was going a certain direction after they started working with you and giving you this character and developing you?
No, I mean, like I said, there were so many other people down there that were, under contract. Like, I mean, like when I was there, like, Punk had just gotten down there. Miz had just been there. He was babyface, and it was like you saw him do heel work, and you were like, oh yeah, man, this guy's incredible as a heel. So there was so many other talented people that were, paid and under contract. So, um, I think, being young and naive, you want to get in that spotlight, but I think it was pretty, obvious that just wasn't ready, at the time, mentally, physically from what they were looking at, guys were massive back then. So it was a different, sport at the time with different, things going on. So
How long did you end up staying down at OVW?
I was there for a year, and, um, I had been there, and then eventually at one point I was actually teaching the beginners class because I think Seth Skyfire was doing it, and then Mike Mondo was doing it, and then he went up for the Spirit Squad, and then Rip had said that he wanted me to do it because I was helping some guys in our class too. So he was like, you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about like tuitions and things like that. So it was like, all right. So I was, because the beginners class was always kind of like some people were like, oh, they're teaching them Hurricane Ranas and stuff, and it's like they were like, we'll just work around. They're kind of messing around, and Rip was like, your job is to get them ready for my class. He says, so when they come into my class, I don't have to stop and be like, what the hell are you doing? So I was like, all right. So I'm like, well, I'll just run rips drills with them, just super slow. And that was pretty much, what I did is I focused on those things. And then I had people come in and they're like, you're running, we had a drill called high spot and it was pretty complex. And they were like, you got these kids running high spot? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, that's crazy. And I was like, oh, all right. Well, yeah, I'm like, they're making it do. So, so it worked out well. And then, uh, like even I, I remember because Alicia Fox, when she got signed, her and Kelly, like people would get signed, they had no wrestling experience. Like I was I was their first class, which I was like, which was crazy to me, was because I was like, I'm not under contract,
Mm-hmm.
but if you get signed tomorrow and you don't know anything about wrestling, I'm supposed to teach you. Like, so it's just like, and now there's the PC. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a whole different way of life back then. So, um, but yeah, it was, and then I tore my ACL, um, and I was like waitering at the time too, so I really had no money. I had gone down with my girlfriend the year prior, so it was like I had a lot of family issues at home too, so
Mm-hmm.
it was like kind of the best decision to head back and um, heal up and try to see what's going on. But then I never ended up coming back down though.
Was there any talents that you worked with that later up ended up getting signed that went through your class that you helped train?
Alicia Fox was one, but they also had, I don't know if you remember Ricky O.
Uh huh.
He was in there, so he was awesome. He was a real good guy. Um, I didn't have that. I had a lot of kids and people in the class, so I had like a 35 person class, and everybody was like, "Dude, that's like crazy." Um, and more people were coming in, so it was pretty popular at the time. But there really wasn't anybody that I had specifically trained from Go that went up anywhere. But there was a lot of guys that I've worked with that are,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, big stars now, though.
How was it training and working with Rip Rogers?
Oh, that was the best, though. I'm sure you've heard plenty of stories
Mm-hmm.
about Rip. So, but he was, like I said, he was just incredible. He would push you and in the right way, though. Like it was just, I said, for me, it was college. After that first month where he would you'd be in the ring and doing something, and he would ding, get the fuck out. And you're like, so like that was like that was bad. So we were like, that would be the worst part was when he'd ring the bell on you, and you're like,
Yeah.
so eventually like that would stop, and once he stopped ringing the bell on you, it was like, all right. But he was a straight shooter. He would tell you, look like crap, what was good, what you needed to do, and he always said, if you have me for 1 year, you'll be good. If you have me for 2 years, you'll be great. And if you have me for 3 years, you'll be fantastic. So I got him for a year. So I was like, at least I felt comfortable with being good. I was like, I had his stamp of approval at least.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I credit most of all my other real knowledge to him really. So I can't discredit where I started, but I mean, he really, like, that's why I said it was like college.
Mm-hmm.
It was a whole different learning curve.
Oh, I'm sure it was with his colorful language.
Oh yeah, that it was the best. I mean, I was all about it, so I loved it. So I thought it was great. So
So, what was your next move after leaving OVW?
I had gone back home and I was rehabbing, the ACL tear and everything, and I think I started working, some indies again up there. Really was kind of not as happy about it because I was really more wanted to be back down in Louisville, but again, I had things with family that really needed to kind of take precedence over things. So there was a lot of personal issues going on, but I went back and started working, independence around, and trying to think what year we're now, probably around like 2008 ish. Once I finally came back up, so I worked with Mike Morgan a lot over in Union City for now it's called American Championship Entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
Ace Pro Wrestling. So I spent a lot of time with him, and he was great. He had his like, his Union City. He had his own like production thing. Worked with Jay Lethal a lot there. That's where I met Jay. Um, and it was just like he gave us a lot of creative control, and not like control, but he let us just, you know, like, yeah, let's do it. And it was
Hmm.
like, all right, cool. Like, so that was where, I even started to develop more of a character where it was more like that was where I met Danny Moff too, and that was like he's like one of my oldest and best friends in the business ever. Like I mean, like my mom passed, I called him. Like that's
Hmm.
like one of the first people like I called, and he I remember I was working a lot, and that's where he kind of had. Then I started doing like a workforce character. Where I was, you know, um, I was always working hard anyway. I did like manual labor work, stuff for my family, and so Mom was just like, "You're a workhorse, man." And I'm like, "You know what? You're right." And then I was like, so I kind of use that a lot, and I used like the Renaissance Man was another little catchphrase because I felt like I was probably a little in my own head at that point where I was like, was confident in my abilities, but um, confidence can come across as arrogance to
Hmm.
some people. So, um, but yeah, I believed in my skills, and I believed that of what I could do, and I just wanted an opportunity. And Jersey All Pro too was a big promotion there in Jersey. There wasn't really much between us, so that was really like about it. Wasn't a lot of exposure to go.
I used to do production for Evolve and Dragon Gate USA, so I've been to the Ace Arena
Oh, okay.
many of times.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a very unique little place that you wouldn't know was even up there.
No.
But I always
Yeah. Which
enjoyed the
side?
East
Which were
Coast.
you on the other side or both sides? Had you seen all the transformations of it?
From what I can remember, it was around 2012, 13. So we went upstairs and they had the whole
Probably to the
arena.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was
So
yeah,
they,
a lot of good shows over there. A
hmm
lot of stuff.
So during all of that, did you ever have any more communication with WWE? Were you doing any more dark matches or tryouts, or were you just
No, I
focused
mean,
on something?
yeah, at that point, I really wasn't focusing on, I don't know, WWE. I didn't feel like that was like really a fit because I guess when I went there, it said like the first time they were like, saw me as a referee and I still wanted to wrestle.
Hmm.
So, and plus, it was just, there was more opportunities coming around on the independents. And I think, with like other promotions and things like that. So I think TNA was, pretty hot too. And Ring of Honor was pretty hot. So, I was trying to get more more exposure too, and but I think I was always still looking to try to get into WWE no matter what. I mean, I feel like that's why everybody got into wrestling anyway,
Hmm.
was to go there. But I didn't really, my parents had divorced, so I was taking care of the house too with my dad, and it was like, there was still a lot of stuff needed to be here, but I wanted to like, make it so I could help them. That was really my main goal, was to make, enough money to
Hmm.
pay off the house and then get my mom a house, and you know that was what I thought I wanted to do.
So how did TNA come about in the Global Force and all that?
We were eventually I was also came around. um I had like a neck injury. I fell on a job site when I was working for the union,
Hmm.
on top of multiple years of wrestling. um I've been wrestling about 13 years at the time, and then I fell off a ladder while I was drilling a 4-inch hole through concrete, and it was like on my third hole for the day. And I hit rebar, and it just the drill spun around. I hit the cross beams and fell off the ladder. Luckily, I landed on my feet, but like a week later, I was trying to drill a hole in the wall, and my hand just let go. And I'd wake up and I had pins and needles all down my arm. Like both my arms were like on fire. Like like when you sit on your foot or something too
Hmm.
long. It was like both, all the way down to my tips of my fingers, both arms. So I had a break in time to had to do surgery, not surgery, but I had epidural procedures, a lot of therapy sessions. It was like I had football helmet with a bowling ball strapped on to the top of it, and it just felt like so heavy and compressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of getting back into it, and I met Pat Buck from I knew him since like 2005, like or earlier. I picked him up to bring him to. He sent an email out, and he needed somebody to pick him up to give him a ride to a Dr. Tom camp, and so I was like reached out, and he was like, you're the only person out of like 40 people that even responded, and I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So that was kind of where our relationship started from there, and then when I came back after the neck injury, he was like, I'm opening up a school. Do you ever want to come down? And I was like, sure. I went down as PWS in Metuchen, and it was like Rip's because he went through Rip's class. He
Mm-hmm.
was he went through everything down there. I mean, Pat was beginner. He went through all the classes. He was on doing stuff, different gimmicks and everything. So he knew how everything ran. And when I started back with him, it was like structured training. And he knew too that I had coached a beginner's class because you go to train somewhere and there's just a lot of guys messing around in the ring, and you're like, like there really wasn't much training. So I coached a little bit at Ace as well too. So I did do coaching there, but um, coaching was free. Not like you're getting paid to do stuff, but so which it's the nature of the beast, but it's different when it's your school. So
Mm-hmm.
but I worked with Pat for a while, and then PWS um was really where I started to get like my feet wet, and we were doing the Southside Players in
Mm-hmm.
Jersey All Pro, me and partner Joe Hardway, and it was like just it was like a strip club type gimmick, and it was very risque, and it was not really kid friendly anymore. But that was like we started doing it, and then he was just like when I had hurt myself, that was when I kind of went back with my roots, and I was like, if I ever get back to doing this, I'd like to do like a Croatian character because my family's from Croatia, or like I always loved Rocky and Rocky 2, and so I took like Clubber Lang and I crossed him with Ivan Drago, and I got Mario Bocca,
Mm-hmm.
So that was like where I got it from. So, and it was like the character too was like my dad when he was drinking, like it was just like angry son of a bitch. So, um, but that was how I started, and then Jeff Jarrett had Global Force. I think we were still PWS, and we did a co-promotion show, and everybody was so cool, and it was awesome. So PWS was really cool, but there was different owners, and then eventually Pat just split with that, and he ran his own thing. So
So how was? Do you still? When did you? Do you still wrestle? Have you stopped wrestling?
yeah, I haven't wrestled. I had my last match like February 2023 with my one of my good friends Craig Steele and
Mm-hmm.
Justin Carino at WrestlePro. And my mom had just passed in the 2022 December, and I really well, I had gotten right before I left wrestling. It was 2019. I mean, I already had both ACLs replaced,
Mm-hmm.
herniated discs in my neck, multiple concussions. But at the end of 2019, I literally got like 4 concussions in like a month. Um, and I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
just like everything felt different. Like I'd walk through the curtain and it was gone. Like the feeling was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I'm standing behind the curtain, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I don't feel good. Like it just didn't feel right anymore. And it was like, I'm not even 40, and I
Yeah.
was like, what am I going to do? you know, worry about CTE, like I used to take chair shots that I had no problem, like I had a concussion when I was in high school. That was
Mm-hmm.
I had like 2 in high school. So it's like, I finally, what point do you like, what's the risk to reward ratio here? You know? Um, so I had always wanted to go to Florida too. And when TNA and everything was in Florida, I, came down here, but, I just needed a change too. I had to kind of get away from it all. Everything was just getting different. I felt like, um, for where I was in Jersey. So I just kind of needed to take a little break. But I came back and did a couple things which I never thought I would do anyway, which was cool. But I knew going into that match that it was my last one, and I didn't think anybody else did, but Craig probably, because that was his last one. So um, it was nice to be able to do that because we got to, not everybody gets their flowers and a
Hmm.
big farewell send off and all that. It's different when you're on the independents and even seeing all the concussion stuff with Adam Cole right there too. I'm like,
Hmm.
I I hear you, man. Like I know, like it's just what kind of quality of life are you looking at, later, and that's
Hmm.
what you really got to think of too. So there's definitely other things that I could do, but it was I needed a disconnect from it too. I'd done it since I was 19,
Hmm.
and I'm 40, so now I'm 44, going on 45. So um, yeah, it was just different. So that was when, at that point, I just knew it was like, yeah, you know, this is my last one.
So how's life been after wrestling?
It was rough transition here. But once I kind of got like situated with, I would do CrossFit a little bit, try to stay healthy and things
Hmm.
like that. And, it was kind of relaxing too because you weren't so, it's exhausting, and, doing it straight for 20 some odd years, physically, mentally, you know, anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety that goes with the business, the backstage stuff. I don't think I was too good at some of that either.
Hmm.
I kind of related more with, always, I don't had feel like I just had a hard time, um, talking to higher ups or people in general. I was just a very nervous person and anxious. So, the backstage part of it is almost probably more important than the onstage part of it at some point.
Hmm.
So, um, but like the stress of, you know, getting kind of away from it was kind of nice to kind of get into a normal feel because it's like you're in the bubble
Hmm.
or you're out of it. And then when you're out of it, it's like most of the time people don't really talk to you or reach out. So,
Hmm.
um, but it's been, I still, think about it all the time. I've thought about coaching. I did a little bit here. Um, but again, that's like, it's easier when it's in your own place and it's your own place, your own school. Like that's where most of the time I'm like, it's just my opinion. You don't have to listen to it, but it's just, my opinion of what I tell people. But I wouldn't mind refereeing at some point, but I definitely wouldn't really want to be having matches and stuff.
Hmm. If
So,
if you had any advice to give to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
um, for anybody that wants to get in, I would make sure that you do your research, um, find out your options of who's credible and what you're doing. Um, do not throw all your eggs in one basket. And I know that they say you have to be all in to something, and that's true, but that doesn't mean that you're neglecting your family time, that you're
Hmm.
neglecting your finances, that you're neglecting your personal relationships too with friends and family and things like that, because you can very easily burn a bridge. Even in wrestling, you can burn a bridge without even knowing it. But on your family too, and being outside, this is only going to last for so long at some point. The shelf life of people, I mean, sorry, yeah, the people, like people that last 2 months, the amount of people that have been injured,
Hmm.
you know, it's going to change the landscape of the game now. Everything has to change because this one's out, that one's out. This is, and that's just the way it is.
Hmm.
And it was simple things like you've seen them. It was like, then you see the crazy stuff, and you're like, no wonder why you're having neck surgery. I mean, like,
Hmm.
it's just, it's so, have your health insurance figured out. Don't do it without health insurance. Um, but if you want to do it, though, I always like that. Listening to what Matt Cardona says is, just don't quit if you don't want to, don't
Hmm.
quit. Yeah, if when you quit, it's over. So I'm like, I get it, but sometimes you just have to know too. what's the risk to ratio reward at this point, because again, there's life afterwards. So,
Hmm.
what kind of lifestyle you're going to live, but, you know,
Very
yeah,
true.
I mean, give it your best shot too, but, um, it's hard on your family too. Like my mother and family, it's hard for them to see you get hurt. It's hard for them to see you, be upset. It's hard for them to watch you get beat up, on the top of it too. So, keep that in mind too with your family. So,
Where can people reach out to you at?
you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Everything's under my full name, Mario Simon Bocara. Middle name was part of my grandfather's name. So, but, yeah, I've been kind of quiet with a lot of stuff. Like I said, honestly, since my mom passed in December, day after Christmas on 2022. So I'm not as social as I used to be anymore. But you can always, yeah, definitely find me. Well, at some point I'll check it.
Well, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling. It's truly been an honor to be able to sit down and talk to you a little bit about your career.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Because like I said, I don't really get many of these, come around. So I do appreciate it too. So
Absolutely. And if there's ever anything that I can do, please feel free to reach out.
awesome. I appreciate it, Brian. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the time.